my request is that effort to get the information, not only the DD Form 1910, but all communications and everything about this that has been archived by the U.S. government, namely emails. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but this is the release letter. This is what accompanies every Freedom of Information Act release. It goes through what you're receiving. Usually this paragraph here is the most important because it tells you what, if anything, is denied. In this case, they located 16 pages, which you can see here, and they determined that all 16 could be released. However, they were making redactions pursuant to what's called Exemption B6. That is if there's a name, an address, something with personally identifying information, that's Exemption B6 and it's redacted. So not necessarily classified, but rather exempt. Attached to that letter were 16 different pages of emails breaking down the communications between Mr. Luis Elizondo and DOPSR, the agency that, again, looked over those 3 videos. The string of records starts on July 24th, 2017. Now, we can assume from this that this is someone that either worked under, for, or knew Mr. Elizondo, and Mr. Elizondo asked for DOPSR's email address. This was pretty unexciting. There's nothing here other than DOPSR's publicly available email address, which kind of makes me scratch my head again a little bit because DOPSR's email address is listed on their website. So I'm not sure why Mr. Elizondo had to delegate that out, but he did. So on July 24th, he received the email address for DOPSR. So obviously this is connected somehow to the release of those videos. So on July 24th at least, Mr. Elizondo wanted to pursue getting those videos declassified. What followed are 3 different emails sending the 3 different videos. He didn't do it, however, until August 9th of 2017. You can deduce from this that he had a problem sending all 3 videos at once. So he broke it into 3 different emails. The timestamps are a little strange. The explanation for that is probably just, again, they're big files, so maybe they just went out of order, no big deal. But again, in the interest of accuracy, that is why you're seeing these, what seemingly are out of order. But on August 9th, 2017, the earliest of the emails was sent at 1:45. The second email was 4:21, a couple hours later. This was the Go Fast email, so he submitted. I'll get back to the context of this, but I want to show you the 3 emails. The third was just minutes later, and this was the gimbal video. Also attached to this, you'll see from the attachment list here, Elizondo DOPSR request 2017-8-9. So he filled that out on August 9th, and that was attached. This also reveals a couple of different things from the previous leaked version, and we'll go into the specifics, but obviously Mr. Elizondo was the requester. We already knew that. Why it was redacted, you tell me. As we go on, I think there may be reasoning for it, but why he was withheld from that leaked document, I have no idea. The email that I'm going back to was the one that had the meat. This was the one that Mr. Elizondo had essentially explained why he was doing what he was doing. In addition to filing the DD Form 1910, he was explaining to DOPSR the context. I'll break it all down for you. These are Luis Elizondo's words. Per your guidance, please find the attached 3 MPEG files for your review. Please note, although the files are unclassified, they are being sent via SIPR or SIPR in the spirit of extra precaution. No locational data is provided in any of the files, and therefore there should be no classification issues. For you computer geeks out there like myself, you may have noticed something. Gimbal was in WMV format. Go Fast, WMV format. FLIR 1, MPEG-4 format. Mr. Elizondo's email, they're all MPEGs. What's wrong with that? This footage and all official U.S. government footage you will see on TTS Academy's Community of Interest comes with essential chain of custody documentation, validating that it is received in its original and unaltered form and is authentic. This proves that they were edited. Plain and simple. Dissecting a little bit more Mr. Elizondo's email to DOPSR, And I'm breaking down a word for word here. Strategic issue. Unmanned aerial vehicles. Remember UAVs? Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. In parentheses, balloons, commercial UAVs, private drones such as quadcopters, etc., continue to pose a potential threat to DoD facilities, equipment, and location. Army, Navy, and Air Force have all acknowledged the potential threat by UASs to DoD equities, but no single unclassified repository exists to share this information across all stakeholders. Mr. Elizondo has an excellent program here and an excellent point. There's nothing UFO related in this, though UFOs may ultimately become an aspect of it. However, he does absolutely have the right drive for this effort. And again, I want to state that because if the DoD really does not have that type of a database, or at least they didn't in 2017, in this day and age, they really should. They really should. And so I think that look, I'm going to give Mr. Elizondo credit. This was a good effort. But what's being revealed here is an absolutely 100% different narrative on what these videos are. They're unclassified videos, number one. And number two, Dopser is being told that they are drones and balloons. And to make matters worse, in Mr. Elizondo's own words, he's breaking it down in the email, stating unmanned aerial vehicles, balloons, commercial drones, private drones, quadcopters, etc., etc. That's problematic. Now, there's documentation to support everything Mr. Elizondo said. I received this before I ever knew the name Luis Elizondo. These were NCIS. You know the TV show. You know that that's the first thing that you thought of. But NCIS stands for Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Years ago, I filed a FOIA to them looking for UFO information. And what I got back was a few UFO-related documents. That's a different presentation in itself. But also drone encounters, unidentified drones that had encroached on military bases, and the investigations that ensued thereafter. What type of a threat could they have been? Were they a threat? Who was responsible? What type of repercussions happened? So on and so forth. So again, Mr. Elizondo had a very excellent drive with this. There's nothing wrong with what he was doing as written away from the UFO thing. And documentation absolutely backs that up. Going again back to that email with Mr. Elizondo, the purpose of those 3 videos. Our collective purpose is to eventually establish an unclassified database or community of interest of related signature data to be accessible by stakeholders such as DIA, the Navy, defense industry partners, and perhaps even state, local, and tribal authorities to catalog and identify specific UAS threats to national security and or DoD equities. By creating a virtual library to catalog and analyze each event, our hope will be to better understand the capabilities and ultimately vulnerabilities of these systems. No disagreement from me, yet nothing on UAPs or unidentified flying objects the way that we know them and the way that the Nimitz and the gimbal and the Go Fast video, or the FLIR one, I should say, the gimbal and Go Fast were described. So that was his justification in that email. But we also see the emergence of someone being CC'd who is not being revealed. Now, again, this is not uncommon. I was actually surprised that the names that you could see, other than Mr. Elizondo, were visible. Now, Russo, who is the Dopser contact, that's the one you're going to see the most. He's the one that spearheaded, again, from the Dopser side, getting these videos reviewed. Yet CC'd was this mystery person. Now, this was August 9th, 2017, that email that I just broke down for you in depth. That was 4/21. 30 minutes exactly go by. And what I would assume is that same CC'd person up here sends an email 30 minutes later. Now we see the emergence of a classification. The other ones were not classified. Michael, who's Michael Russo, that's the Dopser guy. I am checking with NavAir to ensure these files are unclassified and will relay the response. That's obviously the Navy. Thank you for your time and assistance. 6/22, that same person emails again. Michael, just to be clear, we should consider these files to be secret/no foreign. Now, if you don't know what no foreign means, that means no foreign nationals. . So no foreign nationals can see this material. You have to be cleared up to secret. We should consider these files to be secret/no foreign until I'm able to establish that they are to be considered U/FOUO. That means for official use only. What this is stating is this mystery person did not believe Mr. Luis Elizondo. That's standard, I'm sure. I'm not saying that there is any reason to doubt Mr. Elizondo in this email, but this will be an important point come when I deal with Mr. Elizondo's statement on who these people are. So it should be well known now that even though Mr. Elizondo said, yeah, these are unclassified, whomever this mystery person is says, nope, we're going to consider them secret until I can determine that. Okay? And here's a spoiler alert. That means this guy is not with ATIP. Okay? The rumor is these guys are like involved in ATIP. That's not true. At this point, according to Mr. Elizondo, he headed the program. This person does not doubt his director and what he claims if he's part of ATIP. I just don't see it. So that's why I'm pointing that out, because this is a very important email when it comes to the claims of Mr. Elizondo, which are coming up. This is a full screenshot of the documents that I just showed you close-ups of. This is very interesting when within SIPRNet or so on, when they send emails back and forth, each email, if you see where the laser pointer is, says classification secret/no foreign. Every email, and I didn't put a screenshot on, but I have thousands of examples, and I apologize. I ran out of time. That's why I was a couple minutes late. But anybody who uses FOIA, my FOIA people out there that are kind of taking notes on all this, if you communicate with the FOIA office, not all the time, but sometimes they'll put classification unclassified at the top. Even if you're not part of the military, even if you're a civilian and not part of the DOD, they do this. That's a fairly standard thing. So this came in when this mystery person started communicating. All right, that's going to be a key on the fact that no other emails, if you go through every single page, has a classification. Down here, this is the biggest misconception about these emails that I am seeing, and it drives me nuts. And I'll be honest with you, I had to look up a lot of this also. It's not like I just know, what the breakdown is, but so many people are guessing. It's this section down here that has 3 lines: classified by NIAX, derived from, and declassify on. Let me break that down real quick because I think it's really important. You see this a lot on government documents. First, this NIAX. I have seen everything from that's the new program name to ATIP. That is a secret, program involving UFOs. That is some, I'm not even going to go through them all. Point is, people are starting to guess on what this means. This is fairly common to see in classified documents that have been declassified. There are rules and procedures and so on and so forth that break down how these types of lines are written. This is from an official DOD presentation that details, and this is a training presentation, I should say. It's an unclassified presentation given to those that become responsible for classifying information or putting the classified bylines on. What I highlighted here, the classified byline must include the name and position or personal identifier of the derivative classifier. What does that mean? Personal identifier. It's a code. And so here's another training material, this one by the National Archives. And this down here, what is a personal identifier? Some agencies will assign an identification number to each employee that can be used in place of a name and position. This is going to be key with the next line. But in other words, that's just a person. Try not to have people tell you that that is some secret code word or some kind of big reveal that it's a UFO program. It's not. The next line is what makes this really interesting. Derived from, might be hard to read, ODNI, it's the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, HUMINT or Human Intelligence, HUMINT SCG, that stands for Security Classification Guide, dated 2012-7/3. That's July 3rd, 2012. Now, what in the heck does that mean? Well, what happens is that when you have the person, whether it be by code name or name, classify a document, you have to explain why. And you will see different things here. It's not always ODNI, Human SCG. It's a lot of different things. Sometimes it's an executive order. Sometimes it's a internal publication. The derived from line can be quite a few different things. In this particular case, it's this manual. So I dug it up. This is the declassified manual that is referenced on explaining why that document is classified. Now, I find this kind of stuff fascinating. It might be dry for some, but this actually possibly explains why that is classified. That human security classification guide is entitled Office of the Director of National Intelligence Classification Guide, ODNICG. This is, which is really weird. The person, by the way, is using an outdated version. So, go figure. But anyway, the newest version that I am aware of is the September 30, 2014 version. This is the version that this mystery person was citing. So I looked at this after I kind of dug this out and thought, well, why would this manual be on that email? And the reason is potentially that third line that said 50x1/hum or human. 50x1-hum information, which would clearly and demonstrably be expected to reveal the identity of a confidential human source or human intelligence source. Note, I'm skipping. Classifiers shall use 50x1-hum if the confidential human source is clearly revealed. Contact CIO-IMD for additional guidance. This started to get interesting because I don't think it has anything to do. This is a guess, by the way. No one can really answer this. I'm sure Mr. Elizondo can, but I think that this is a fairly good educated guess because I don't think it's the content within that message. I think it's the person who wrote the message. This is another page from that same manual that justifies the classification. Again, that 50x1-hum or hum, however you want to say it. It's human, for human intelligence. Information identifying current or former ODNI, that's Office of the Director of National Intelligence /CIA, officers as being, and then it's classified. Classify secret/NF, that's short for no foreign or no foreign nationals. We know that if and then it's classified. Why is this important? Because I bet you that guy who's responsible with a high security clearance to review information like ATIP, related material, UFO videos, top secret drones, bombings of Kyrgyzstan, I mean, you name it. I bet you that guy was former ODNI or CIA. And I bet you his identity is what's classified. Now, he's probably been in the field for a long time. He probably came back, got the position he's at, and he's somehow connected to document reviews in whatever agency he might be in. He doesn't have to be OSD. He could just have some kind of release authority over that information. So this is actually really fascinating to me because, again, it's just an educated guess, but again, it matches up exactly to our mystery person here. And only on the emails that mystery person wrote and were involved in had that classification. So, if that's what it is, very, very cool, but it is not an ATIP member, okay? And even though I'm again, giving an educated guess on the identity of why those emails are, just those 3 emails or that one page that I showed you was classified. Everything else is unclassified. I think that it's that identity. That's really what I think it is. He resends, Mr. Elizondo resends, 9:43 a.m. on August 17th. Those 2 emails go in. And 1 minute later, the third email. So he resends everything again, resubmits it all. Why? I have no idea. There's no context. It's just all resubmitted. August 23rd, Michael Russo, who we know as the Dopser guy, tells Lou, hey, I'm still working on it. He says, so-and-so has been in contact and I've explained the situation to him, but wanted to ensure you knew I was still working the request. So in other words, it was still being processed. Next up, that same day, 8 minutes later, 8 minutes, Luis Elizondo responds, thank you sincerely, my friend. If it is easier for you or more streamlined, then please consider our request for unrestricted release. However, my intent is to maintain positive control, but I know it's a bit unique of a situation, so whichever is easier for you and quicker. If at all possible, I would like to have authority to move it down to unclass or unclassified by tomorrow. Again, sorry for the inconvenience. I owe you a coffee and a donut. Thanks again. I very much would like a coffee and a donut, Mr. Elizondo, especially right now. Be that as it may, this was sent to Mr. Russo. This is very important on many, many levels. Why? Because this proves right here that that section 3, remember going back when I dissected the DD Form 1910, actually means something. When he says not applicable to presentation or publication, that it was for United States government use only, this proves beyond any shadow of a doubt he knew that he was locked into that. So those that attacked me and attacked the Pentagon for it, by Mr. Elizondo's own writing, are proven wrong. He knew that by his DD Form 1910, he was not able to do anything more than what he asked for. So in this, which is unorthodox, from what I can tell, not that I do DOPSR reviews every day, but unorthodox to submit a DD Form 1910 and then do additional requests on top of it via an email. Now, the Pentagon statement to me referenced amendments. Well, if this is an amendment, let's operate off of that assumption for a minute. Let's just pretend this is an amendment. The last email in the chain was sent the next day by Mr. Russo. This is the DOPSR guy. August 24th, 2017, 3:20 p.m. Lou, if the service level OCA verifies to me, simple one-sentence email is fine, that removing the metadata from the videos makes them unclassified, please feel free to move forward with the release. This was in response to Mr. Elizondo saying, hey, if it's easier, let's do unrestricted. The way I read this is, hey, look, the way that it is written, and here's why, the way that it's written, here's your release, cleared for open publication. This was the attachment to this email. This will become very, very important when you see some of the spin articles that have appeared. So DOPSR had given the approval based on the wording of Section 3. We know that because of this line right here. This was attached to this. So the approval was already given. However, what I feel is probably unorthodox was Mr. Russo, and I tried to get you an official response on this by this video. Sadly, I could not, but I'm going to continue to work on it. But from how I read this, and I will allow you to do the same, how I read this is, and here's the attachment, again, it was already cleared based on this. The OCA, now what's the OCA? It's the Original Classifying Authority. There's a couple different variations of that, but essentially whomever's responsible for classifying the video in the first place, the Original Classifying Authority, is the one that has to write DOPSR and say, look, we're responsible for that XYZ classification. As long as the metadata is coming out, then yes, it's unclassified. In my opinion, what would happen next, if these emails would be attached to the DD Form 1910, if that assumption is true, and these are considered amendments, and that would then therefore allow Mr. Elizondo to put them to the public. Here's the problem. Nearly 2 years have gone by. There is not an email from that service level OCA, at least not in this FOIA release. I showed you that FOIA release letter to show that nothing was withheld. What I'm trying to get an answer to is whether or not the Navy, because we know that by the form itself, the Navy is here it is down here, if you can see it. OCA is Navy POC, or point of contact. So we know that the Navy is the official, the original classifying authority. There's no communication from the Navy here. There's nothing. So the only way that this could be, again, for unrestricted release, was that DOPSR said, okay, fine, we'll sign off on it, but the Navy has to tell us it's okay. And there was not a single communication from the Navy. Now, does that mean it doesn't exist? Of course not. I'm willing to accept that, but I have to point it out because no one is talking about that. No one is realizing that the approval was already given when this email was written. It's probably a little unorthodox, but DOPSR realized that if it was an unclassified video, if Mr. Elizondo really did submit an unclassified video, then they probably didn't really care about redoing all of the paperwork, and probably said, yeah, man, if you're going to, release these drone videos, go ahead, as long as the Navy signs off on it. But there is no Navy sign off. Now, again, I'll repeat it 1,000 times. I am open to the Navy coming in and telling me, yes, we responded, or so on and so forth. And by the way, so you all are listening, I do have messages into the Navy, and yes, they are working on that to try and get an answer for me. I spoke with them yesterday. We'll see how it comes out. And if they give it to me, I will absolutely release it, and I will amend what I'm saying. But you'll see up here that when Russo gave the approval of this DOPS reform, whether you have to abide by Section 3, he CC'd the Navy also. He let them know, hey, if you guys want to give me a one-sentence email, I'll go ahead and allow Mr. Elizondo to do it open, unrestricted release, which is what Mr. Elizondo asked for. And yet that is not there.